For example, you take someone like George Washington. This is a guy who was a hero of history for a long time. People who knew him were very favorable toward him. And then as you move to 1926, a book came out called George Washington, The Image and the Man. This book by W.E. Woodward said, you know, we always thought we knew George Washington. That was just the image. Let me tell you about the man. He said, oh, he was immoral. And I have that original 1926 book. It does not have a single footnote in the book, not a single footnote. 1927 book came out and tore that book to shreds. Documentary-wise, said, you said Washington did this here. He wasn't even in that state at the time. He was over, and so it just tore it apart. But what happened was, in the 1930s, as people wrote textbooks about Washington, they said, you know, maybe Washington wasn't all he was cracked up to be, and they cite the 1926 book. Then the 1935 books cite the 1930 books, citing the 1926 book. Then the 1940 books cite the 1935 books, citing the 19... And so by the time you get to today, I can show you 100 books today that say that George Washington was immoral, but none of them predate 1926. They all cite back to that one source. And that's what's happened, is we have tons of documentary source, we have tons of eyewitnesses, we have tons of writings, we have 100 volumes of the writings of George Washington. Nope, we're going to look at what this guy said in 1926, and that is the authority. And that's what's happened, is death by 1,000 cuts. What happens today is because we have a viewpoint that the Constitution is secular, and because we as good citizens want to uphold the Constitution, we don't want to be seen as rebels in our own country, we've really come to this kind of a tone and a feeling that if you're pro-faith, pro-religious, you're trying to overturn the Constitution. You're against Americanism. You're anti-American somehow.
Separation of church and state.
Separation of church and state. You're trying to overturn the fundamental underpinnings. No, no, no. Being pro-faith is exactly what produced that document. The guys who produced it were themselves pro-faith. They saw that document as a result of biblical ideas that they incorporated in it. They talk about that in their writings during and afterwards. And for us to be pro-faith, we're right in the tone of what the Constitution is. The secular tone that we get today is exactly opposite to what they intended, but because we don't know our history, we're made to feel like outsiders if we want faith involved in the public arena.